This is a story I've told many times before to my heavy metal friends, but today I'm going to retell it on video with a person who was actually there. So I went to visit my friend, senior pastor of the Crown Point United Methodist Church, Reverend Mark Wilkins. I've told this story many times over the years, and it always gets better every time I say it.
Oh, good.
And you're a big part of the story. Well, it started with a shift in musical taste. When I was a teenager, I was all about like going way back. Probably Eddie Arnold was my first like musical love, believe it or not. I think my grandparents had a Eddie Arnold record. It was the only record they had. And
Dude, Eddie Arnold, okay.
And I would listen to that or stuff my dad would listen to. If it was about a song about trains, it was fine. So lots of Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings and Merle Haggard. I was a big Elvis fan. So Elvis died, and I was crushed when Elvis passed away.
Okay.
I was ridiculously upset. And then I discovered the Beatles, like right after that. So it's all about the Beatles, and I kind of, somewhere around age of 11 or 12, on Top 40 radio, there was a lot of harder rock, metal. So you had like Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister after that. There was like Rat and Motley Crue.
Yeah.
And I gravitated towards that. I remember Def Leppard being like, whoa, what's this? You know, It's like pop music with a guitar crunch. I started listening to, we had a radio station called Z-Rock. It was a satellite radio station out of Dallas, and there was a Chicago affiliate, so we got this broadcast, and they played like all this obscure like metal stuff. So we had like King Diamond,
Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yngwie.
I credit you because I still listen to Yngwie Malmsteen.
Because of that, I think I was 13 going on 14 when I discovered Yngwie. Iron Maiden was a big one, Judas Priest. So I started buying posters. We used to go to the mall and walk around the mall, and we'd buy a bunch of posters at Spencer's, you know, and then whack kids on going the other way in the escalator. Started hanging these up. Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, big door poster in the inside. I started decorating my room with this kind of stuff. My mom and dad were real concerned. They were like, this isn't good. Right at that time, I think you had just come to be the new pastor at the church that we'd been going to for several years, I think, by that point. Well, you're going to go we set up a meeting for you to talk to the new pastor. We're really worried about your taste in music. And
boy, that's...
Oh my God. They didn't understand it. He's listening to the devil music. So they brought me in, and I were like, oh my God. I think I'd maybe seen you like once or twice before. You hadn't been there very long. It was like a couple of weeks. And I'm like, hi, you know, and then, so your mom and dad tell me you've been listening to some music that they might not understand. I get it. It's all like Halloween, you know. It's theatrics, you know, and you know, Iron Maiden and bands like that, they're cool, but if you really want to piss off your parents, let me give you the good stuff.
Did I really say that?
You sure did. And you opened up this drawer and you gave me a big stack of Alice Cooper vinyls. I'm like, Alice Cooper? What? And it was like, I know I had Muscle of Love, there's Welcome to My Nightmare, they're well-worn records, and you're like, I think you were replacing them all on...
Now I gotta go back, I gotta re-listen to all these,
They were just like this stack of records, you know, like Flush the Fashion was in there you know.
Oh, wow, that was... So
it was more obscure stuff, but I know, $1 Billion Baby, like everything. So I'm there, and I'm like, okay... Well, it seems cool. I don't know a lot about him. I was just starting to kind of listen to
your poor parents.
Some older stuff.
Basically, they sent you for anger management, and you landed with Charles Manson as your counselor.
They came and picked me up, you know, and I got home, and my dad got home from work that day. And, what did Pastor Wilkins have to say to you about you and your music? I'm like, well, he said, you know, those bands are okay, and it's just for fun, you know, but... He said, if I really want to listen to the good stuff, I go back to the beginning where it all started. All these Alice Cooper records. And their jaws just dropped, especially my dad. He was like, what? And they couldn't do anything about it. And I'd sit there, and we had like one of those big, you know, I had a turntable and an 8-track, big cabinet stereo. So there's no headphones or anything like that. I'm just sitting there on the floor with all these records spread out, listening to them over and over.
That's hilarious.
Pretty sure I was about 14. I know I couldn't drive yet.
Yeah.
And that was my introduction to Alice Cooper.
Yeah, I'm proud to have been able to be that conduit.
I remember seeing Alice Cooper on The Muppet Show.
Yes.
I think it would have been
He was on
78.
twice. Yeah, 78. He was on twice, yeah.
I did not know he was on.
One of them was a Halloween edition, yes.
Ooh. I remember seeing that. I remember all the kids talking about it on the bus. There's some Satanist on The Muppet Show.
And that's so funny is because he was on The Tonight Show. I mean, he very much was a part of mainstream Hollywood because he got that. But none of us really recognize the irony that, I'm watching Alice Cooper with Johnny Carson or with Kermit the Frog. He saw the humor in that I don't think a lot of people did.
And he was all about the showman, the schmaltzy guy. He didn't take himself seriously.
Yeah.
By the time he was on the Muppet Show and Hollywood Squares and stuff, I think his eerie mythology around him kind of started to dissipate,
Yes. Right.
Alice is growing up, or not when he was
and he
starting out.
He wasn't the first, but he was one of the first to realize that optics is everything. And he created the optics. He created this character. And boy, went full bore Max and has still not abandoned that character because it works, But at the same time, that's hilarious. I did not remember that story, James. That was hilarious.
It's my and then, from there I kind of like delved deeper. Like I remember Kiss when I was like, and probably in that era. And I wasn't into it yet. I didn't really.
Right.
Probably about the end of the 70s, like older siblings of my friends, were getting their records out, and so like AC/DC and Black Sabbath, that was my introduction to that stuff.
Right.
Like Led Zeppelin and all that. They're like, oh, these are the classics, I'm surprised Alice didn't come up,
I would not consider, I'm sorry, I've never considered Kiss a classic. They sold more posters than they did albums. They were a show without the music. Alice absolutely had some good music, and still does.
I think I have a Kiss shirt on.
Do you?
It's a Paul Stanley thing.
The corollary is when I was growing up, the cheap concerts were Hammond Civic Center, $5 festival seating. So when I was 14, 15 years old, somebody said, "Let's go to Rush." What's Rush? So my first 3 concerts, and so I went straight, and I never did the Eddie Albert thing or the Johnny Cash thing. My introduction to music was Rush, and then right about that time, here comes this guy who's chopping the heads off of baby dolls. I'm 15 years old when $1 Billion Baby comes out, and it's like I understand the generation, particularly before me, was the Beatles, that just changed their worldview. Listening to $1 Billion Baby is the first time, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a different world. And then you go back and school's out and, all of that.
If I had to pick a, hard rock icon, it's always been Alice. I've never met him. Ancillary to my little tale of being introduced to Alice, I remember I was telling a story to somebody, and just about that time I heard something. I think my brother called me and said, "Pastor Mark's going to be on Good Morning America." I'm like, What's that about? I still didn't understand exactly how it all worked. It was like make a wish come true.
Well, the short story of this is, I blunder through life, and the greatest stuff God gives me is always serendipitous. So Jane and I are getting ready to go on a cruise, so I'm home on a day I wouldn't normally be, and I'm packing, and Good Morning America's on, which I never watched, and they said, it's the beginning of some of this summer we're doing Live Out Your Wildest Dream. Cut a video of you pleading why I didn't have time to do that. So I sat down and fired him off an email and said, look, at that point I'm like a 52-year-old pudgy bald pastor who all of his life has wanted to be on stage with Alice Cooper. I sent it in and completely forgot about it. So we go on the cruise, come back, I preach on Sunday. By the time I get back into this office, there's 6 calls from New York. It's like, who the heck do I know in New York? So I called the guy back. He said, I'm one of the producers. And he said, you're one of the top 6, but you didn't send in a video. I need a video by noon tomorrow. It's like, oh crap. So the next morning I got my staff together and said, okay, I got to cut this video. How are we going to do this video? And we cut it, sent it in. Bottom line is, I won the vote. Out of all 6, I won. Now, they ended up giving the final 3 their thing, but I won the vote. So I'm thinking, okay, in a couple months, maybe 6 months, they'll bring me in. I get back to my office after the reveal, because Good Morning America's here when they're doing the reveal. And I get a phone call, and they said, okay, here's the deal. Next Thursday night, we're flying you out. And Friday, you're going to be with the band, and then you're going to be on stage. We're flying you back on Saturday. And I looked at the calendar, and I said, is this me or me and my wife? And he says, just you. I said, then I'm not going to go. He said, what do you mean you're not going to go? I said, dude, Thursday's my 25th anniversary. I am not ditching my wife for my 25th anniversary. She later told me I could have.
That's the silver one.
Yeah, right.
That.
But the guy said, damn it, let me call you back. Hangs up the phone, calls me back, and said, fine, in this one instance, it's you and your wife. So that's how we celebrated our 25th anniversary. Got down there, they bought us dinner. Next day, I don't mean to go on, but next day I get there. Alice is due in about 3 o'clock, and we get there at like 9 o'clock. And they said, well, you just meet the band. And this tall, thin, older guy walks up, and he says, hi, I appreciate you doing this. My name is Shep Gordon. And I looked at it, right. I looked at it and I said, I am not talking to Shep Gordon right now. He said, yeah, why? You know who I am? I said, dude, you're a genius. You're a legend. And I said, can I ask you questions? He's like, what do you want to know? So he said, I spent like the best 3 hours of my life. 3 hours sat there hearing his stories, hearing about how everything that he had done and how he got on with Alice. And then 3 o'clock he pulls up in the bus. Good Morning America is there. And they said, okay, now we're going to film you walking down the sidewalk into the bus. And honest to God, that was the longest walk of my life.
Jeez.
I don't think I breathed the entire time there. So the bottom line is he was the nicest guy in the world. My wife watched the concert with his wife, and they got along. Met Rob Zombie, was his warm-up that night. And honest to God, this sums up the whole experience. I saw this. While Alice is on stage, Rob Zombie was in his dressing room watching The Sound of Music. That's that entire experience. They were so nothing like what any mythology you have about backstage at the concert. I saw a roadie light up a cigarette, and I mean a tobacco cigarette. That's the most debauched thing I saw all day.
That's pretty crazy.
It was crazy.
You're supposed to go outside.
Right, exactly. The one time he knows how to use it, because afterwards we were back in his dressing room. Good Morning America is there, and the producer was a bit of a pain in the butt. And I'm wearing this smock that's covered in fake blood. And Alice says, hey, that's going to be a great souvenir. Let me sign that. Signs the back of it. And I said, actually, Alice, I got to tell you, Good Morning America says I got to turn this back in. And he looked at the producer and said, what? And the guy said, yeah, we bought it. It's ours. And he turned to him and he sits up and he says, Alice says, give it to him. Just like that. And the guy went, okay, I'll mark it as lost. It's like, and then we're back to normal. You know, I always treasure that. Alice says, give it to him.
Dealing with handlers and
yes,
production people all day. He's got that
sweetest
down.
Man in the world. Sweetest man. Talked a lot about faith. Good Morning America warned me, don't talk to him about faith. Don't talk. No, he wanted to talk to me about faith. He wanted to talk to me about how, the first thing he said to me is, if it wasn't for Jesus and my wife, I'd be dead right now. And his best friend, as he said, my best friend is my pastor. He said, yeah, believe when I get back, he has me teaching a Bible study. He said, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, none of us do, Alice. So he was just to say he was normal is an understatement. He was the most normal guy you could ever imagine.
You would think there's the on-stage persona, whatever my dad thought that Alice was.
Right.
Like, why are you listening to that asshole? I'm like,
and that's exactly what he was aiming for. That's exactly what he wanted the parents to do that. He wanted the parents. So one of the things, here's an example, I'm sorry, forgive me. One of the things that I immediately hit up Shep Gordon with, there was this big deal where Pretty's for You was held up for weeks, like 3 weeks release late, because It was shipped from Japan, and each vinyl album was wrapped in paper panties because that was a thing in Japan. Well, customs, who would know this? There's a bizarre law that says you can't import paper panties in the United States.
Why? It's not like you wear them.
But it made headlines because they had to delay the album 3 weeks while they opened every one and took them off. So the first question I asked Jeff Gordon was, I said, okay, paper panties. He said, yeah. I said, you knew that, didn't you? And he laughed. He said, yep. He said, I read, there was a New York Times article about how paper panties were illegal. He said, the albums were actually pressed in Canada. I paid to ship them to Japan, specifically to wrap them in paper panties, and then ship them back over. And then I called up customs, and I said, this shipment is coming in at this point, and it has paper panties in it. It's illegal. Knowing that's genius. That's genius.
It's all about the show, the perception.
It's the perception, and that's the original guerrilla marketing.
That's how it's done. You know, enough to get my dad red in the face when I'm like looking at. I remember being at 3D in Valpo getting school supplies, and I had the Constrictor just come out, and I'm like, oh, I went and got the cassette. Like, why are you spending money on that? I'm like, Pastor Mark said it was.
Yeah, thank you. Well, he never gave me grief. Your dad never gave me grief over it. Your dad never gave me grief over it.
I think as time went on, you know, and as he got older and spent more time in front of the TV.
Well, when you see him on Merv Griffin, it's a little bit hard to quite generate the level of angst that you did when you heard he was chopping off baby dolls' heads.
I think he got it. And then here's my dad watching Ted Nugent. You know, it's Ted Nugent from Fox News, you know, not from, you know, all the concerts I went to at the Radisson there in
Terrible
Maryville.
Ted.
I saw Alice I saw Alice a lot. Almost more than any other artist. I think there's a couple that I've kind of seen a bunch of times.
You got
National Acts, Alice, probably 11, 12 times.
And what's great about seeing him today is he knows why you're there. I went to see Dylan once, about 10, 15 years ago. He played all new Dylan music. It was the most boring concert I've ever been at in my life. It was terrible. Alice Cooper knows you're there to see him sing Elected, No More Mr. Nice Guy. He's got to chop the heads off a couple baby dolls.
There's got to be a guillotine.
There's got to be a guillotine. There's something. And he'll vary it up a little bit. And he will throw in some of the new music because actually, my opinion is some of the new music is really quite good.
I haven't listened to Detroit Stories. I think was something that was out during.
His work with the Hollywood Vampires. He's kept it fresh, but the guy's smart enough to know why you just paid the ticket for admission. You know, you don't go to see an Alice Cooper concert unless you want to see a baby doll beheaded.
Right, you got to do it.
You got it.
You know, here I am in my 50s. He's in his 70s, still doing this, you know.
One of the times I saw him, there was a big video screen behind him, and it was hilarious because all of a sudden, in the middle of the concert, this buzzer went off. It says, warning, warning, new song. And he went on and he did a couple new songs, and then it flashes up, okay, back to the good stuff. He gets it.
Never met Alice. I met his daughter, Calico.
Did you meet Calico?
I did.
She's a comedian now, I think.
No idea. I met her in New Year's Eve '97, and Alice played in Maryville.
Did you really? You met Calico?
Met his whole band. Big Eric Singer was on drums there. I know I met 87 maybe, 87 or 88. I met Kane Roberts and his band he had then, and I met Eric Dover has been with him a long time now. And
the bass player, I forget what his name is.
Chuck.
Eric. Yes.
So he's been with him probably a long time now.
He was
30 years or so.
Yes. And he was a super nice guy. Everybody there, they had to be nice to me because of Good Morning America, but they didn't have to be nearly as nice to me as they were.
They're nice to me. I had nobody then.
Yeah.
My friend Kevin and I went out to see Alice on New Year's Eve and met his personal assistant. Brian Nelson was his name. They called him Renfield.
Okay.
And he'd been his assistant since probably the very, very early 80s. Special Forces tour maybe or something. He like just was hanging around.
Yeah.
Had a big collection of stuff.
Yeah.
And he employed him. He's like, I need somebody to go fetch me this or that. And he like kept him as a personal assistant. He had personal affairs and stuff, dealt with his management. And there's in the days of the early days of internet communication, so we had listservs. We're not going to message boards or blogs or anything. We got a listserv, an email listserv for discussion. And there's one called Sick Things. It was an Alice Cooper group, and it kind of like the official one. This is where like band members would sometimes interact. And I remember when Glenn Buxton passed away, they organized the tribute and stuff through that listserv. But that's how I became acquainted with Renfield. He was very actively participatory in that. And he did a little meetup with people that came out to the show.
Cool.
So, you know, he was cool. We didn't get to meet Alice. He's like, Alice, he's in bed after a show like that. You want to meet Alice, you got to go to the mall about, 8 o'clock in the morning when they open the doors.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, he's an old guy, but by golly, you wouldn't know it on stage. On stage, he's on. And again, you got to love it because he knows his lane. He's stuck to his lane. He's kept it fresh enough. But at the same time, he knows why you're there, and he knows what the parameters of who Alice Cooper's supposed to be.
But
so,
that was pivotal, just because of
Yeah, that's so great. I didn't remember.
You hadn't intervened at that moment. Who knows where my musical tastes would have gone? I
don't remember it, but it sounds like me. Because that would have been me. So
I couldn't even drive yet. I remember that.
I remember one of the first times in that youth group, like it was one of the first weeks I was there, we were going somewhere in that ratty bus. And in the background, someone had a boombox, and Kinks Lola came up. And I yelled out, "Turn that music up!" And they immediately killed it. And I said, "Why'd you do that?" He said, "Didn't you say turn that music off?" I said, "No,
turn it up.
That's Lola, dude. You gotta hear Lola loud, Anyway.
Yeah, we had fun. We had a really good time. It was, fun part of growing up. The youth group and sailing. It was just a good time and happy moments at that period in life.
Oh my gosh, I remember. I'd still love to get that group. You guys played such a pivotal role in my life. I mean, because you guys were like 10 or 11 years younger than me. Some of you probably more, but some of the older guys were 10 or 11 years younger than me. So
a couple of those guys were like seniors.
I'm growing
John Sanu was a senior.
Right. So I'm growing into this pastor thing, but I'm an immature pastor thing, and you guys became friends. You did. You became people that I liked to hang out with. That group had such cool people in it. I didn't have to hang out with you. I enjoyed hanging out with you, and you guys, I'm grateful for how you guys accepted me into your world.
We hazed you. We did.
We
forked your lawn one night.
Oh yeah.
I remember doing that. Jay Grabby and John Sanu, and they were like Scott Creekbaum came out. He came all the way out, just put plastic forks in your lawn in the middle of the night. That was good.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's great, on your office door.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's Alice and Abby.
Oh, hey.
I call that Beauty and the Beast.
Alice looks grizzled.
Yes.
He looks grizzled.